7:33. Fresh Talk 93.3. Arkansas's new talk station. I'm Neil Gladner. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. It's candidly been a little bit of a rocky road. There's so many different things to happen, and so let me apologize for our technical missteps that have occurred. But one of them that is not a technical misstep, we got this one right. On the live line, we have Congressman Tim Griffin. Good morning, Congressman. Hit the top button. There we go. Now we have Congressman Tim Griffin. Yeah. Don't we?
Good morning.
Okay, there you are. Can you hear us okay?
I can.
Okay.
I'm down here in Camden. I snuck into a room, closed the door so I don't wake up the rest of the house.
I appreciate it. Is Camden home for you?
No, I grew up in Magnolia, but my wife is from Camden. So the good news is, when we come down, when we go down to South Arkansas, whether we're in Camden or Magnolia, we're always close to the other one's family.
That's
so
right.
It works out real well.
Well, I'm sure that you're happy to be home for the holidays, and I'll bet constituents are giving you guys, all of you around the country who are home, an earful about what you did or did not do when you were in Washington up until last week.
Yeah, it's been relatively quiet in terms of the emails and all. It slows down. This is really the only part of the year that slows down, because every other time when I go home, it's not, the TV talks about Congress being out of session or Congress being on break, but all that means is we're working back home instead of working in D.C. Like when in August we have like a 4-week what the press calls recess, but I did 14 town halls and so many other events in August, so you really don't get downtime. You're just working in a different place, but Christmas is special, and we really get a little bit of downtime. Although I'm up talking to you, so.
But I presume when you walk into the grocery store, you stop to get a soft drink at a convenience store or something like that, someone who recognizes you takes you aside and says, Congressman, I don't understand what you did last week, or I don't understand what Congress did last week. And last week, of course, what everybody did was postpone the problem for 2 months, in essence.
Yeah, you get some of that. I think most folks, well, hardly, most folks don't recognize you anyway. But but the ones that do will reach out and usually just say hi, but you get some of that. But that's fine. I like to talk to folks. My wife thinks I like to talk too much. And so I enjoy striking up a conversation or whatever, and that doesn't bother me one bit.
Let me ask you this. Last week, Congress voted to continue the payroll tax reduction for another 2 months. I heard House Speaker Boehner say it was just a matter, in his words, on one of the Sunday talk shows, all we managed to do is kick the can down the road for another 2 weeks.
Yep.
I heard you talk when you were at the Downtown Rotary Club a couple of months ago, say that all that's been happening is, and I can't remember your exact quote, but it was kind of like nibbling around the edges or tweaking around the edges, I think is what you said. Most observers who are in the middle, not to the far right or to the far left, Congressman, say that we need some kind of a combination of spending cuts and revenue increases. And I think I heard you say that as well when you spoke to Rotary.
Well, I'd say a couple things. First of all, on your last point, what I've said is we need to go bold, not tweak around the edges. I continue to say that we have a big problem. When you have a big problem, you need a big solution. When you have a blocked artery in your heart, a Band-Aid is not sufficient. And so I think of it in those terms. We need, we need continue spending cuts. We have not been able to make bold ones. We have been able to make some this year, but not bold ones. And on the revenue side, I have said all along that I don't think Americans are taxed too little. Do I think the tax code is a mess? Do I think we are taxed inconsistently and unfairly in many cases? Yes. I am for comprehensive tax reform that will flatten out the rates, meaning fewer rates, lower rates, also close loopholes. Loopholes are not something sinister. They're written into the law, but because of there's just tons of them, some folks can take advantage, some can't. Let's simplify it by closing a bunch of them. So, and I believe through that you will get more folks paying their fair share. There's like 50% of folks, 48% that don't pay any income tax. I think people need skin in the game. So the short answer to that question is yes, we need more revenue, but we need it through tax reform, increased economic growth, and what have you, not through just raising taxes on folks.
Congressman, it would seem that there was a fairly comprehensive and basically easy to understand solution put out there by the Simpson-Bowles Commission. Mm-hmm. It did much of what you're talking about in terms of flattening rates, in terms of reducing or eliminating loopholes, depending on how you look at those personally. Why didn't that get traction?
Yeah, well, same reason nothing else has this year. You've got the president and the Senate who have a altogether different view of where we ought to be going as a country. And let me say this. First of all, back to the payroll tax real quickly. That is not that is tweaking at the edges in terms of trying to stimulate economic growth. I like giving people their money back, but I don't believe that is some kind of great solution to our economic problems. I think I don't think it has a big impact, but it's hard to be against giving people their money back. So I don't think that's some kind of big, bold deal, although there was a lot of discussion over it. Simpson-Bowles, I do not agree with every single thing in Simpson-Bowles, but it's a great starting point. Why haven't we used it as a great starting point? The president asked for the commission. The president got the report. I think it was December of a year ago. So what happened? The president effectively ignored it. He put his budget out right after it came out, and his budget was one of the biggest spending sprees in our history. Totally ignored it. His budget didn't deal with Medicare reform to save it, didn't deal with Medicaid reform, didn't deal with Social Security reform, didn't deal with overall tax reform. So you look at it and you go, wait a minute, Mr. President, you wanted this commission. They did their job. I don't agree with everything in it, but they put some really good proposals forward to start the conversation. All you had to do was say, look, let's start with their proposals and negotiate from there, figure this thing out. Didn't do it. Why? Because a lot of the proposals are bold, and he wants to get reelected, so he's playing sort of the prevent defense. Hey, I won't do anything to save Medicare. I won't do anything to save Medicaid. I won't do anything to the tax code. I won't do anything to our spending. I'll just sort of hunker down, try to beat up Republicans because they're trying to do bold stuff and see if I can get reelected. Okay, that's what has happened.
Let me ask
if
you
he
a
wanted
question
to change his mind today, love to talk about Simpson-Bowles.
Let's. I need to take a quick break. If you'll stay with us, I want to come back
sure.
and talk specifically about what happens between now and November with regards to solutions. Okay?
Yep.
So hang with us. We'll be right back. Congressman Tim Griffin with us on Fresh Talk 93.3. Fresh Talk 93.3. I'm Neil Gladner. We're talking with Congressman Tim Griffin. Congressman, there are those who say that we may not have a very good chance of getting anything done in a meaningful way between now and November, in part because of what you just talked about. I mean, the president says there are those who will say the president's just going to hunker down and beat up Republicans, and there are those who say on the other side Republicans are going to hunker down and beat up Democrats, and we're the ones who are going to end up with yet almost a full year of inaction, it feels like, until we get past the November elections.
Well, let me say this. Both sides are going to make political contrast and politically talk about the other side. That's democracy. I don't have a problem with that. The question, the question is who has the high ground, who's telling the truth. When your two kids come in and there's cookies spilled on the floor from the cookie jar, they're both going to have an explanation. It doesn't mean both explanations are wrong, but if they're blaming each other, one of them's right and one of them's wrong. Here's the deal.
You remember Bill Cosby saying that if you only had one child, you weren't really a parent because you always know who did it.
You will. Something like that. And here's the deal. The founders said, we want three. We're going to have a House, we're going to have a Senate, and we're going to have a president. Unlike the British system, where it's unitary, you win the election, you control everything, you do whatever. Our founders did not trust government to make big, bold actions. So, as Speaker Boehner often says, our system was set up to not work smoothly and easily. That's checks and balances and separation of powers and all that. So, when you have one House, the House of Representatives controlled by one party, and you have the Senate and the presidency controlled by another, and the visions are completely opposite on many issues, yes, you're going to have disagreement. Yes, you're going to have conflict. Yes, we ought to look where we can agree. But I can tell you, one of them is telling you, go due west, and the other is saying go due east, and that's why it's been so hard to find common ground on some of this stuff. I have some people go, well, if it was my business, I'd just do this. And I say, well, here's the difference. If it was your business, you're the only one that would matter, and you could just decide. But we got 536 of you that you got to, so it makes for gridlock. This year it's going to be tough because the president is going to be running around beating up Republicans in the House, I'm sure, and then you're going to have the presidential aspect. It's going to be tough to get a lot of this bold stuff done. I'll make clear, though, as I have before, if anybody brings up anything bold that helps us deal with these solutions, I am all ears for voting for it and getting it done. I believe we need to deal boldly with our spending. We have not been able to do that as a country, but we have done it as a House of Representatives.
Now, as a citizen, though, I will say that I think we need to deal boldly with spending and with revenue both. And my fear, just watching the news, reading the paper, just observing what's going on, it feels like Republicans are more interested in beating Democrats, and Democrats are more interested in beating Republicans than anyone is, and just lip service is getting paid to getting the problem solved.
Well, let's look at that, because let me tell you why that's not true. Who actually voted for, put up a budget, voted for a budget? We did. Who voted for Medicare, Medicaid reform? We did. Who voted for tax reform? We did. Regulatory reform? We did. The Senate hadn't done any of that. The Senate hasn't had a budget in over 2 years. A lot of people don't know that. Let me repeat that. The United States Senate has not passed a budget in over 2 years. We're supposed to have one a year. Nancy Pelosi didn't pass budgets when she was in charge. We were made in charge in January. We passed a budget when it was due in April, before April 15th.
And what happened to that budget? We've got about a minute left.
Well, that budget is our template for how we do things in the House. But the Senate, if the Senate doesn't agree to any of that stuff and the president doesn't agree, then we're doomed. in terms of that budget. That budget is the one that puts us on the path to balance. That's that budget. Look, we got to have individual and corporate tax reform. That goes to the revenue side. We've got to have that. Our tax code is something like 60,000 pages.
Oh, my tax return was 63 pages. Just and that's crazy. Let me ask you this. I mentioned we've got about a minute left, Congressman. What's your gut feeling if you had to do a 1 to 10, 10 being everything gets done? What's your gut feeling that we have the very thing you're talking about, big, bold actions before November, before the election? Give us your odds on that.
I don't think you have a Senate that's willing to do it. I don't think you have a president that's willing to do it. We have stuck our neck out for sure. So I think highly unlikely you get anything big and bold before November, because too many people that the president wants to vote for him are opposed to big and bold. At least he thinks they are. If he would just approve the common sense Keystone Pipeline, that'd be a start. He runs around the country talking about jobs. Approve the Keystone Pipeline. There's some jobs. We're losing jobs in Central Arkansas out at Wellspun because he's delayed Keystone. He talks about jobs, and his administration was attacking the Boeing company in South Carolina. I mean, I have concluded that he's for jobs, but only certain kinds of jobs. He doesn't want just any jobs. Congressman,
you come back and visit with us after the session gets started again?
Anytime. Good luck. Hope you all have a great first day, first week, and take care of yourself. I'll be happy to be on anytime.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, Congressman.
All right, thank you, man. Happy New Year.
Congressman Tim Griffin there. 7:51. This is Fresh Talk 93.3.